South Korea's job market is broken beyond repair. Today, even the brightest graduates from its top universities are struggling to find work. A recent government survey of new PhD holders, those who finished between August 2023 and February 2024, found that over a quarter were still looking for a job but couldn't find any. And 30% had simply given up altogether. And while the official youth unemployment rate hovers around 7.2%, the reality is far worse. Nearly 40% of young South Koreans are trapped in unstable part-time or temporary positions. So, how did a nation so obsessed with education become a graveyard of broken dreams for its brightest students? South Korea rapidly transformed from one of the world's poorest countries after the Korean War to a global economic power. This was often called the miracle on the Han River, which symbolizes the story of sacrifice and collective ambition. But this success came at a cost because it embedded values and systems that are now fueling the job market's dysfunction. At the center of South Korea's culture is Confucianism, which emphasizes hierarchy, education, and social harmony. Education in particular became a sacred path to upward mobility. From a young age, South Koreans are taught that their worth is tied to their academic achievements. The nation's entire education system revolves around one central event, the College Scholastic Ability Test, or Suneung, which is an intense 8 to 9 hours exam that can determine the rest of a student's life. The Suneung isn't just a test, it's a national ritual. Flights are grounded during listening portions. Businesses delay opening and emergency services escort late students. As intense as all this sounds, it reflects the sheer weight of preparation from both the students and the entire country, all for a shot at getting into one of the prestigious Sky universities. Seoul National University, Korea University, and Yonsei University. These schools are the golden tickets and the ultimate brand names of success. And South Korean families invest heavily in chasing that dream. The country spends more on private education per capita than any other OECD nation. Parents invest in private tutoring and cram schools, known as hagwons in Korea. At these institutions, some students study from dawn until midnight just to get good grades and enter a tertiary institution. In South Korea, almost every young adult has finished high school. In fact, in 2023, only 1% of people aged 25 to 34 hadn't completed upper secondary education. That's way below the OECD average, making Korea one of the most educated countries in the world. And they start very young. In 2022, 66% of kids under 3 were already enrolled in early education programs. That's the highest rate in the entire OECD. For kids aged 3 to 5, 96% were enrolled in school, which is 13% higher than the average. But all this means one thing. South Korea has some of the most packed schools in the world. In elementary schools, the average class had 25.2 students, way more than the OECD average of 21.3. And in middle schools, the number is even worse. They have 33.4 students per class, which is the highest among all OECD countries. But despite this intense educational arms race, the reward at the end is no longer guaranteed. Because if everyone's doing the same thing, what exactly happens to the job market? South Korea produces more university graduates per capita than almost any other developed country. According to OECD data, over 69% of South Koreans aged 25 to 34 hold a tertiary degree, well above the global average. One of the primary reasons why many young people in South Korea struggle to find jobs is because so many people are funneled into a few job openings at South Korea's chaebols, or family-run business empires. They run nearly everything in the country, from cars and phones to hospitals and theme parks. Samsung isn't just a tech company, it sells life insurance, runs an art museum, and even has its own amusement park. Hyundai doesn't just build cars, it runs a hospital in Seoul. LG sells electronics, but also runs cosmetics brands and dozens of other businesses. Back in 2015, the 5 biggest chaebols made up 58% of South Korea's entire GDP. South Korea's small and medium enterprises, or SMEs, which make up 99.9% of businesses and employ over 80% of the workforce, are often overlooked by job seekers. Why? Because graduates don't want a job, they want the job. But the supply of dream jobs hasn't grown with the demand. The growth of chaebols, once the driving force of South Korea's economic miracle, has significantly slowed in recent years. While these conglomerates still dominate the economy, their expansion has stalled. Global competition, particularly from Chinese firms in industries like electronics and automotive, has affected their market share. For instance, Samsung, which accounts for a significant portion of South Korea's GDP, has faced intense pressure from competitors like TSMC and Xiaomi, limiting its ability to create new jobs at the pace it once did. Additionally, chaebols are increasingly investing in automation and artificial intelligence to cut costs, reducing the need for the human workforce. In 2023, Samsung announced plans to expand its semiconductor production with highly automated facilities. While boosting efficiency, this caused fewer opportunities for newer graduates. Economic stagnation in South Korea, with GDP growth averaging just 2.1% annually from 2020 to 2024, has further constrained chaebols' ability to hire. There are also regulatory pressures. The government is making efforts to reduce monopolistic practices. Reforms aimed at improving corporate governance and reducing the power of family-run boards have forced chaebols to focus on restructuring to protect their assets, rather than growth. As a result, the number of prestigious high-paying positions at these conglomerates, once a reliable pipeline for SKY graduates, has dwindled, leaving a surplus of overqualified candidates vying for a shrinking pool of jobs. But for many Korean youth, it's the dream of a job for life to work with a big conglomerate or nothing at all. As the economy slows down, there simply aren't enough jobs for all the college graduates anymore. That leaves many to turn to test-taking as competition rises. They study more, retake exams, and earn more certifications, hoping that something better will come along. It's called the spec culture, a term that refers to the endless collection of qualifications, skills, internships, and even plastic surgeries that graduates pursue to make themselves more competitive. Now, more specs don't guarantee success. They just raise the bar for everyone and increase competition. That's only compounded by the cultural emphasis on working in a high-status profession, meaning many young people refuse to settle for lesser jobs. In fact, getting a job at a chaebol isn't just hard, it's nearly impossible. These companies set up so many barriers that even trying to apply feels like a test of survival. Take Hyundai, for example. Just to be considered, applicants have to sit through a brutal 6-hour exam. Samsung has its own version of the SAT, a corporate entrance test so intense it feels like a national event. And then there's the TOEIC, the English Proficiency Exam. It's not just a test, it's a gatekeeper. Without a high score, many job seekers don't stand a chance. In South Korea, doing well on these English tests can decide your future. Universities now require high TOEFL scores just to graduate. And if your English is strong, your starting salary is higher. If it's weak, you get left behind. The pressure is so extreme that some people turn to cheating. In one case from 2009, 2 men were caught entering the restroom to provide answers during the TOEIC exam. They earned $2,300 to $3,900 per person per test. And even if these graduates manage to land jobs, most of the time they are underemployed. And this forces the majority of them to take on debt and rely on family for financial support, which actually impacts their ability to become financially independent. For young people, the inability to secure stable jobs delays major life milestones. Many can't afford to move out of their parents' homes, let alone marry or start families. The average age of first marriage has risen to 33 for men and 31 for women, and the birth rate continues to plummet. This creates a feedback loop. Fewer births mean a smaller future workforce, which further stifles economic growth and job creation. Even worse, social pressure and mental health issues are increasing. South Korea has the highest suicide rate among OECD countries, and for those in their 20s and 30s, unemployment is among the major risk factors. The shame of being jobless in such a hyper-competitive society can be overwhelming. Many hide their employment status from their family. Others isolate themselves entirely. part of a growing population known as hikikomori, young adults who withdraw from society out of shame of failure or despair. There's also a cultural stigma against non-traditional paths. Startups, trades, or freelance work are often seen as fallback options, not something a sole national grad should be doing. So even as opportunities exist outside the mainstream, social pressure keeps many locked in a self-destructive pursuit of status. But with all these problems, the high unemployment, the impossible tests, and the shrinking job market, what has the government actually done? Recently, local governments in South Korea have tried to step up. Cities like Busan are launching new programs to help young job seekers. Busan, for example, has set aside 75.2 billion won, around 4.55 million pounds, to give more support to young people looking for work. The city's employment office, part of the Ministry of Employment and Labor, says it will build more places and programs to help with career advice and job training. One part of this plan is the Youth Job Growth Cafe, a place where young people can meet, build confidence, and take part in activities to help with job hunting. They offer 20-hour programs that teach things like how to write a CV, prepare for interviews, and manage stress. But is this enough? While a few programs might help some people, they don't fix systemic issues. As these challenges persist, the impact is becoming clear. The dreams of its brightest graduates are on hold, and the clock is ticking. Can South Korea reinvent itself before it's too late?